Hello and welcome. My name is Jenny Grove. I'm a higher education champion with Take Your Place. During this presentation, we are going to be looking at interviews. Many of you will be having interviews for sixth form or for college, maybe for a part-time job or an apprenticeship. During this presentation, we're going to look at our top 10 interview tips, how to prepare for online interviews, and how to be a star at an interview. I'll explain that as we go through. But the overall aim of this session is to make you feel more confident in an interview situation. So, what is an interview and why do we have them? Have a little think yourself. When we're going to interview for a sixth form or a college, basically that's about getting to know you. If you're lucky enough to be going in person, then you'll get to look at the college, maybe look at the facilities, have a chat with the people who might be teaching you. The person interviewing you will be looking at why you've chosen that course and what you perhaps want to do in the future. It's more about making sure that this is the right next step for you. Job interviews, apprenticeship interviews, they're a bit different. They are trying to make sure that you're the right person for that particular role, and their questions might be a little bit different. During this presentation, we're going to focus on both, but really we will be talking more about the sixth form or college interview, as that's what's more likely going to be the next one for you. So, our top 10 interview tips. The first one is quite obvious, but it's harder than you think sometimes. You need to listen really carefully to the questions and then make sure that what you say actually answers the question you've been asked. You need to be specific when you're talking about your experience and giving examples. You're going to use something called the STAR method, which we'll come back to. It's really important that you know your strengths. There's another presentation that's all about helping you to understand your strengths. And if you're not sure about your strengths and your skills and qualities, then perhaps you need to have a look at that, or go online or talk to friends and think about what are your strengths? What are you good at? It's important in interviews to be honest. Never lie. You might get caught out. For a sixth form or a college interview, there's not really any need that you would be able to lie, but sometimes for jobs and things like that, people do exaggerate the truth a little. It's always best to be honest. It's important that you ask questions as well, because this shows that you're interested in the job or you're interested in finding out about the school or the college. We'll come back to questions you can ask. It's important that you're positive all the way through. You need to be positive. Even if something has gone wrong, you need to talk about it in a way that is positive. You need to talk yourself up. You're showing the best possible version of you. And sometimes that's tricky because we're nervous. But if you just try and be positive all the way through, then that will come through. After the interview, don't dwell on it. The worst thing you can do is worry about the things you should have said or you shouldn't have said. It's over. It's done with. You might get an opportunity to talk to them again, but for now, just move on. Before the interview, look over the application form that you wrote, because you might be asked questions about what you wrote. The night before, you should relax, have a quiet evening, have a bath, whatever makes you happy. Try and get yourself as relaxed as possible. Don't let those nerves take over. And finally, it's really important to be punctual. If you're traveling to an interview, then you need to allow plenty of time, work out how you're going to get there. If it's on a bus or you're getting a lift, or even if it's an online interview, you need to be at your computer a good 10 minutes beforehand to make sure that all your technology is working, the internet's working, all those kind of things. And talking about the internet, it's very likely that you're going to have a virtual interview this year. And it's important that you understand how that's going to happen. Some people might just do this on the phone, a phone call. So therefore, all you need to do is be ready to answer questions over the phone. But more than likely, it's going to be on something like Zoom or Teams, which you've probably used during lockdown, and so you're kind of familiar with it. But you need to understand which one they're going to be using and then familiarize yourself with it. Practice using the technology beforehand. And if possible, try and have a practice run ahead of the real thing. Can you get a family member or a friend to be on the other end of a Zoom call for you and practice answering questions on Zoom or Teams? It will just give you a little bit of confidence that actually you can do this. You can cope with being on screen and answering questions. Now, it's quite important that you prepare your interview setup. So, thinking about what's in the background. If you're going to be on Zoom, they're going to be able to see what's around you. Now, you might want to add a sort of virtual background, but again, think about the suitability of what you choose. Try and make sure that any animals or younger brothers or sisters aren't going to come in and disrupt you. Switch off your email and your social media so that you don't get things pinging while you're talking. If you're using a computer, make sure you close all the other windows so that you focus on the thing that you're doing. Focus on the interview. You're going to be giving your first impression over Zoom or Teams, and that's why it's important that you do have a look beforehand, practice your setup, look at how you look on screen, and make sure that you're going to be given a good first impression. Answering interview questions. Well, if you're not sure, if you misheard or you didn't understand, you can always ask them to repeat the question or to explain the question. And that's better than giving the answer that you think is the right answer, but might not be the right answer. It's okay to pause, to take a breath, and then answer the question. You're allowed time to gather your thoughts. You don't have to just blurt out the first thing that comes to your head. As we've already said, it's really important to focus on the positives. So you can talk about things that haven't gone well, as long as you can explain what you've learned from the experience. This will show them that you've got maturity. You're able to reflect on things that haven't gone so well and grow from them. Try not to ramble. I can be a bit of a rambler. I have to remind myself to stick to the point and that they can always ask me for more details if they want them. I don't have to tell them everything in one go. So back to our virtual interviews. You can practice answering interviews at this website, Barclays Life Skills. You will have to register, but it's quite quick. And once you're registered, you can use all the information that's on there, and there's loads of stuff. But this particular one shown here, this person will speak to you. She'll ask you a question, and then you can practice answering that question. Might feel a bit weird at first, sitting there talking to a computer, but it gets you answering typical interview questions. If you don't want to speak out loud in front of a computer, then just watch the model answer. So what they've done is they've recorded people giving good interview answers, and watching them will give you an idea of the kind of things you could be saying. Obviously, you can't just repeat what they said because it needs to be reflective of you as an individual, but it will give you a good idea of the kind of things they're looking for. So, some typical interview questions. Share an example of a time when you faced a difficult problem at school or at home. How did you solve this problem? So what they're looking for is what was the problem and how did you actually solve it? So there's a couple of other questions there you can have a read through. Some of them are tricky to answer when we're talking about being positive. So tell me about a mistake you've made. Tell me about a time when you were under pressure, a difficult decision, a time when you failed. These are all things that were difficult and you could use negative language. And so the trick here is to, yes, admit that something went wrong, admit you failed, but then give them all the positive things that came out after it. We'll go on to an example in a minute. We talked about the STAR method before. It's very simple. Basically, the first thing is the situation. You describe what was happening. And then 2 is the task. Explain what you were doing. 3 are the actions. So describe what actions you took and, importantly, the skills you used. 4 is the result. What happened? What outcome did you achieve? On your accompanying worksheet is an example of an answer using the STAR technique. Just bear in mind that when we use the STAR technique, we aren't actually saying, oh, 1, describe the situation. We don't actually spell out situation, task, action, and result. We just use it as a way of making sure that we've included everything that we need to include in our answer. Have you got any questions for us? Now, at the end of every interview, they will always say, have you got any questions for us? It's always good to think of something that you can ask. If you're going for a sixth form or a college interview, there'll be things you need to know. It might be about the bus stop. It might be about where you get your lunch. Those kind of things. They're all okay to ask about. It's really important that if you have any specific access requirements or learning support needs, then you ask questions about that if it hasn't already been covered. Because it's really important that while you're at sixth form or college, you get the support that you need. You could ask all kinds of questions about uniform, about opportunities for work experience or extracurricular activities. In this kind of interview, when you're at sixth form college, there's really no such thing as a silly question. If you were going for a job interview or an apprentice interview, it's always good to ask about what a kind of typical day might be like, what opportunities there are for self-development, all those kind of questions. Now, talking of questions, if you have any questions about interview skills or anything related to moving on through your education, onto university, onto apprenticeships, anything like that, you can get in touch with me. My email address is jenny@takeyourplace.ac.uk. Don't forget to have a look at the worksheet that accompanies this presentation. And if you've got an interview coming up soon, then I wish you the best of luck. Try not to be nervous. Interviewers do this all the time, and they will do their best to put you at ease. All you need to do is relax, take a deep breath, and answer the questions as best you can. You'll be brilliant. Thank you for listening.